like to get our last fireside of the night, Max Yoder. Max is basically a co-founder of several startups and an author, and he's going to help share some knowledge about how we could all work better together. Max, please join the stage. Basically, tell us a bit about how you got started. I think in 2000, you graduated in 2010, and it looks like you started off right in the world of going to startups. So, can you explain how that journey?
Yeah. So I graduated in 2010, as you said, and worked for a gentleman who started a company called Exact Target. And they became a gigantic email service provider. And it was a great person to work for. His name's Chris Baggett, because he basically encouraged me to start my own business. And 2 years later, I started Lessonly. I started a business in between that did not do very well called Quipple. And then Lessonly started in 2012.
Yeah.
And eight years later, we have 1,000 customers and 180 employees, and it's gone a lot better than the first company.
Well, if it's lasted 8 years and you got 1,000 customers, sounds like it's going.
It's going well.
What was the insight or problem you were trying to solve with Lessonly?
Yeah, we found out that people who bought.
What was the problem?
Yeah, we found out that people who bought training software were generally dissatisfied. They thought it was expensive. They thought it was hard to use, and they didn't know what value it was providing. So we said, hey, what if we made it inexpensive? What if we made it not so hard to use? And what if we tied it to value? And at the time, there were 300, 400 learning management systems out there. So we just said, hey, what if we do it differently than all of them? Because it just felt like there was this broad dissatisfaction. And it turned out that there was. And over time, we started to focus on sales teams and customer service teams, which was a big difference to our business. I think if we hadn't focused, it would have been harder. But we focused in on just sales teams and customer service teams. So who do you talk to before you buy something? We want to work with them. And who do you talk to after you buy something? We want to work with them.
How'd you with the other 400 LMSs?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it had a lot to just do with just being genuine and showing energy. I mean, the space was not ripe with energy. There wasn't a lot of folks who were out there like just showing a lot of joy for what they were doing. And we were excited. And I think it was really helpful for us to be naive in a bunch of ways about what people needed from training software, because that naivety allowed us to do things that ended up working. That we didn't know that, other people thought were crazy or silly. We started doing them and people were like, no, I actually kind of like that. So knowing less about the space helped us.
And then how'd you get knowledgeable? How'd you get to 1,000 customers? What was the key insights
Yeah, thanks
or
for
processes?
asking. So we looked at our cross section of customers that we really liked working with. That was number one. Who do we like working with? Who renews well? So that's another part of the Venn diagram. We like working with them, then they renew well. And then we said, that it's pretty evident. It's sales teams and customer service teams. And we asked ourselves, well, why do we like working with them? And why do they renew? Well, we like working with them because they have goals, and they renew because they have goals that we meet. So it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy of, hey, we do something that they need and it works. But it's tough in training software to not sell to HR exclusively. Human resources is who tends to buy training software. And we believe that that's not necessary. We believe that teams can own their own training destiny. So we sell to those sales teams and customer service teams who want to own their own training destiny. They can still work with HR, no problem. But ultimately, we think the team should be setting the standard for what better work looks like.
And so I think I was researching before, and I think it sounds like HR traditionally is worried about compliance. What's different about these teams that want to learn differently? And how have you helped them?
Yeah, they have practical needs that change on a weekly basis. So think about compliance needs. They change maybe once every 6 months, maybe once every 12 months. But practical, tactical needs on a sales team or customer service team, they can change weekly. And they change because you got a new product to sell. You got new pricing structure you have to understand. You've got new promotions that are available. So the rapid change on those teams means that we can train people. And then over time, we realized that, just telling somebody information is only so helpful. What really helps people is practicing. So we tell them the information that they need to know, and then we help them practice how they might deliver that information to a customer. And the practice is where the magic happens. I mean, if you try something up like 10 times, 100 times, you get better at it. And we help people do that.
And if so, it's content. How's learn people be successful?
Yeah. So a lot of this content is really just updating people on the latest and greatest playbook. So when the new promotion comes out, somebody on the team says, here's the promotion. Here's why we released it. Here's how we think it's going to help you. And here's how to talk about it. And people are like, hey, thanks for the update. A lot of companies hope that their teammates will figure it out over time. And that's kind of a sink or swim mentality. The idea of, hey, we hope you'll figure it out, because if without a lot of guidance, a lot of people won't figure it out, right? So a lot of sales orgs or customer service orgs are like, figure it out, and and some people do and some people don't. And sink or swim is a tough mentality to live in. It's a tough mentality to thrive in. So we say, hey, forget sink or swim. What if we taught people what it looks like to do something well? What if we gave them models? Would more people do it well? And the answer is yes.
So it sounds like you focus a lot on helping people do stuff better. Like you have the book called Do Better
Right.
Work. So what's your philosophy here, and what does better work even mean?
Yeah. So better work is really two parts. There's clarity and there's camaraderie. So clarity is about understanding what's happening, why is it happening, how does it impact me, how does it impact my teammates. And clarity is not something that you like get to and then you're done. You have to continually push for more and more clarity. It's like 1% at a time each day. What has changed? What do we need to re-clarify? Clarity is a moving target. But if we understand what's happening, why it's happening, how it impacts me, how it impacts you, that's a big part of clarity. And another big part of clarity is understanding what matters, why does it matter, how do I do it. So those are parts of clarity. And then camaraderie is this idea of how do we develop a mutual trust and respect. And without camaraderie, there's no chance for better work, because camaraderie is something that allows people to be open about what they're feeling, what they're thinking, acknowledging their reality. So if I were to say, hey, I listened to what you just said and I'm nervous. If I were nervous, it'd be an important thing to tell you that, right? I couldn't do that without camaraderie. So
Yeah.
ultimately, camaraderie breeds more clarity, because I'm allowed to say what's happening in my head. And then if you know what's happening in my head, we can talk about it. But if we don't have camaraderie, I think it's pretty much impossible to build clarity.
So can you give me an example of clarity and camaraderie and how you've applied it at your own works, your own office and your own startup?
Yeah, you bet. So a big part of clarity is having difficult conversations. So if you feel a sense of conflict with somebody, having difficult conversations with them is very important. Another big part of clarity and camaraderie is getting agreements. If you and I, Alex, were on a team and we sat down together and I told you something that was really important to me, and I said, hey, can we agree to do this thing going forward? And you said, hey, Max, that's interesting. I'm open to it, but can I maybe suggest a few tweaks? And I say, yeah, sure, suggest your tweaks. And then you do. And then we say, okay, can we agree to that? And you and I are like, yeah. And then we do this, pre-COVID, we do a fist bump. Right. But
What do you
now
do
we just
now?
maybe elbow it, or we just do this via Zoom. But the idea is we get an
Yeah.
agreement. That's going to build camaraderie, because you and I have taken time to understand one another, what you need, what I need, and then we've agreed to it. And it's highly uncommon for people to sit down and do that, because what we tend to do otherwise is we have expectations for how people should behave, and we just hold them up here. We say, hey, Alex, in my head, I hope you do this thing, and I never tell you about it. And then I get frustrated when you don't do it. And I'm like, well, Alex sucks, but he doesn't suck, right? You just need to know, and you'd help me if you knew. And just like I'd help you if I knew. So it's unfair to have unspoken expectations. It really is. So agreements are about having them, and we build camaraderie by doing so. And then, yeah, go ahead, please.
So so can you build camaraderie without clarity, or what comes first, camaraderie or the
Yeah,
clarity?
so I think the reason I put them both in the book is because I think they're both very
Yeah.
necessary. I think a business can have a lot of clarity and not have camaraderie, but that clarity is only going to last so long, because we only keep clarity if we have camaraderie, right? I can get you up to speed today, but if you don't trust me and respect me over time, we're going to fall out of favor, and we're not going to talk about things we should have talked about. So I think they're both equally important parts of the puzzle.
And when you're in a work situation, does this something you can do as an individual, or does it have to be part of the company
Yeah,
culture?
my hope is that an individual can do this to their best ability. So the book that I wrote, Do Better Work, is not geared toward managers. It's geared toward teammates. Anybody on a team can exercise the behaviors that I write about: getting more agreements, highlighting what's working, having difficult conversations as an individual. They don't need a manager to do them. My belief is leadership leadership and management are decoupled. You can be a leader and not a manager, right?
Yeah.
So this book's about being a leader, and that doesn't matter if you're a manager or not. So anybody on the team can exert these behaviors, can demonstrate these behaviors. It doesn't mean that the system will change. It just means you're doing your job. And I think that's a very important thing. Like if I was having a difficult conversation with you, Alex, it doesn't mean that it's going to go well if I follow the principles in the book, Do Better Work. And the principles are based off of a gentleman who in the 1960s came up with this thing called compassionate communication. So if I follow the compassionate communication principles, which I think are highly, highly likely to help you hear me, even if I follow them, it doesn't mean that you're going to hear me, because ultimately you're an individual actor in the conversation who can go, forget this, I don't care. Like you choose if you hear me or not, right? But I need to do my part to encode the message in a way that optimizes your ability to hear me. Whether you hear me or not is a different question, but I can do my job to encode the message in a certain way.
Interesting. So Max, if just because I'm taking the principle, the two-player, so is there any actions I can do to help the other person understand what I'm trying to do? Like, again, I guess I can be clear about it, but what's the biggest way to get someone else over the hump?
Yeah. So if you're trying a new principle, like let's say the book, having difficult conversations as I describe them in the book is it's unnatural. What we tend to do in difficult conversations, Alex, is we judge. We say, "Hey, I thought it was boring. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was dumb." And the approach that we take in the book is very different than that. So it can seem unnatural. So what you can say to somebody before you have the difficult conversation is, I think we need to have a difficult conversation. And I'm trying a new approach to them because I think it's important that I don't judge, and then I just state to you how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. And my hope is that it makes it easier for you to hear me because I want us to work well together. So Alex, can you hear me right now? Yeah. So when
Yes, I
we do
can.
that, Alex, when I state my intention, I give the person an understanding of where I'm coming from. I tell them that I'm trying something new, which gives them a sense of understanding that this might come off as awkward. But I'm doing it because I want this to work in our relationship. And I think that's an important thing to do. Like asking clarifying questions is a chapter in the book. So if I just start randomly asking clarifying questions without telling you why I'm doing it, you might be like, what happened to Max? Like he used to never ask clarifying questions. Now he's asking them all the time. But if I tell you, hey, Alex, I'm asking clarifying questions because I assume a lot in my life and I don't want to be assumptive. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions to make sure I understand what you're saying. You probably will respect that, right? And appreciate that. Not guaranteed, but I'm doing my best if I do that.
It makes sense. Just commenting, I just noticed a comment there. Jason says, feels like Max is queuing up to let Alex go at the end of the conversation. So last point before I let you go. So how would you take that reaction like that? Because, I guess when people are very direct and clear, sometimes people
Yeah.
get worried.
Yeah.
So, any tips there? And then, then I'll let you go on
Yeah,
this
no, I would not, I'm
conversation.
not letting you go, Alex. I don't know you well enough to do that, and I don't employ you. But yeah, let's say people get nervous
Yeah.
when I'm being clear. I just have to prove to them that when I'm being clear, I don't fire them right after, right? So that's just repetition. That's just us being in the same space over and over again. All we can do is control our behaviors, and I think it's highly it is common for people to focus on what other people do and not look at what they do. And I don't control what you do. I don't control what anybody does, but I do have more control over what I do. And I think it's very easy to lose your entire life worrying about what other people are doing and instead say, I'm going to control my own behavior. I'm going to take responsibility for my own behavior. And I'm going to bring my ideal self or my best self to this conversation if I can muster it. Because that's the best I can do. And if the other person doesn't want to show up to that, that's okay. But I think they will. I think a lot of people are really desperate for compassionate communication, for thoughtfulness. And I think they're really tired of a fear-based work culture. And I think fear-based work cultures are entirely too common. And I think they create this pseudo compliance where people, when they're being, watched by the person th're scared of, they maintain their compliance. But the whole time they feel like they're under somebody's thumb. And all they want to do is get out from under somebody's thumb. I wanted to build
Cool.
love-based work cultures.
And I think this is great. Max, thank you so much for those insights. It looks like
Hey,
Jason's
thank
popped
you.
back on, and he's going to tell me to get off stage.